morning, soul siblings. This is Natalie and you're watching Goddess Undone. In this video, I just wanted to talk a little bit about my tarot journey. I wanted to talk about some of my favorite decks. I wanted to talk about what it means to connect with the tarot deck, and I want to talk about oracle cards a little bit as well. This is the second video that I'm filming for this channel, and I'm still like dipping my toes, getting my feet wet in the ocean of what I want this channel to be. So I definitely anticipate some more thought-provoking, headier videos in the future coming up, but for now I just kind of wanted to do something a little bit casual, just hang out, talk a little bit about tarot, talk a little bit about my journey, gush over some decks with you guys. Anyway, so if you are interested in seeing that, then keep on watching. So I started reading tarot about a year ago. I stepped into a metaphysical store in my neighborhood, a smaller little mom and pop shop that's local to me. Kind of even before going in, I'd had the calling, but it really kind of, got louder as I was in the store to purchase a tarot deck. Now, I had had some curiosity and experience in like learning about New Age and like different metaphysical, like religious, spiritual philosophies and things like that. And I find it very fascinating on an intellectual level, but some of those things didn't quite resonate with me. Like I believe in, but I don't live by the law of attraction, kind of meditate on and off, and just something wasn't quite vibing. Yoga's a little weird for me. Exercise for me is a little weird in general, but that's like a whole other topic. Something was just kind of still drawing me in, and I had this calling to like check out a tarot deck. I'd always wanted to get a tarot reading, but I never really thought about necessarily reading tarot for others or for myself in the past, but at some point I just kind of got really curious and wanted to pick one up. So I asked people which would be the good deck for beginners, because they had like a lot of different fun decks and different things like that, and they recommended, of course, the Rider-Waite. They gave me two options, a more traditional Rider-Waite deck and this one, which is the one I ended up picking up. This is my first tarot deck ever. This is the Radiant Rider-Waite Tarot. They just kind of said that it was like a little bit recolored and things like that. It's almost like a remastered version. So like the line work, I would say, in this one is a lot less hand-drawn looking. It's a lot smoother. This is one of my favorite cards in the original Rider-Waite. This is the 10 of Cups. It's just such a happy card. Everybody's like hanging out. It's like the family. Can't get any better than this rainbow. Like, what is going on? It's awesome. When I first cracked open the deck, I was very fascinated, and I found the images to be very, kind of strange and otherworldly, kind of like at times pretty dark, but also at times very playful. I was very intrigued, and I was intrigued by how there were like different suits, like playing cards. I didn't really understand at that point the difference between the major and minor arcana. I hadn't really thought about that, but it was very overwhelming. There's 78 cards in the deck. Kind of put it aside. It was just a little too much at that moment, but over the next few months, the kind of calling got louder for me, and I delved into my deck a little further, and I definitely fell in love, and I definitely think I found my niche in spirituality to be something that's a little more rooted in like kind of, tarot and witchcraft, paganism. I find that those kind of fit my, beliefs. They fit my aesthetic and my interests and, all that kind of stuff. So that's how I kind of got my jump off. So I'll show you a couple of other cards. This is like my favorite card of all time, the Empress. I have a post on my blog that I'm very proud of about her, in regards to what she means in traditionally, and as well as, in our current culture, and she definitely speaks to like autonomy and different things like that. I just love the way she's dressed. Like she has this like super stylish, like Free People maxi dress, it looks like, and like this star crown, and she's just like chilling way hard. She may or may not be pregnant, but she's just that bitch, basically. So another one of my favorite cards. Also, I really love the 2 of Cups and the Sun. I just love this baby. Again, very playful, very enjoyable set. And I think the coloring on this deck is really beautiful. It's like very like, lush and vivid, but like a little bit soft in a way as well. I know not everybody's super crazy about the Radiant Rider-Waite. It's probably one of the, I would say, less popular of the different editions of this deck, but I think it's a really good beginner deck. And I love how like the number of the card, if it's, these are like, this is a minor, so it's like an actual, like, actual number spelled out 2, and then cups, like you'll get the number and then you'll get like the suit on the bottom. And then with the majors, it's like the Roman numeral 3 and the Empress. So it's like very clearly, you know, stated on every card which card it is, which I think is very helpful. Some other decks don't necessarily list things out as clearly. So even with a more traditional Rider-Waite's. So I think that this is like very good for like a beginner, like a very good system of learning with. So when I eventually did decide I wanted to kind of really learn the tarot, you know, I had this resource, of course, that came with the deck, which is very, very dense. It's very dry in the way that it's written. It's just, this is something that would take a lot of effort and determination to crack through to really kind of get like something out of it that you can relate to in terms of what these cards mean. So I just kind of put this one aside. I mean, kind of, you know, a little bit just to kind of get my curiosity going. I would kind of look at this to get some deeper meaning, because when I decided to really delve into tarot, I started watching some videos, and they talked a little bit about like thinking about like cards as a movie, and what are the cards like, what do the scenes look like to you, and different things like that, even if you don't know the traditional meanings. And that didn't seem to kind of vibe with me. I kind of really just wanted to know like what the traditional meanings were, and I had already started shuffling my deck, so I decided I just wanted to start, you know, looking at, you know, like 5-10 cards a day and just really like studying their meanings. I felt like that was just, you know, like not to take the meaning, I know you're not supposed to take the meaning super like literally, because that very much limits, you know, what you can read, but it's definitely, for me, was a very good basis, and I still think that my readings are very based in the traditional card meaning. I don't necessarily, if I get an intuitive hit, I'll, you know, speak to it, but I don't necessarily kind of really just let my feeling or like take me away from like the traditional meaning of the card. I think I'm a little more traditional in that sense. So the first book that I kind of really got into, just again, like kind of using this as a little like, you know, cliff note kind of thing for a little bit of deeper meaning, but this was the first book that I really used to learn the tarot. I think this book is really funny. It's called How to Deal Tarot for Everyday Life. This is definitely a book meant for teenage girls, and I am definitely far removed from being a teenage girl, but when I saw this book, I really like kind of, that's why I wanted to get it, because I felt like it was a much more simplified version of something like this, where it kind of would be like a little bit fun, a little bit more relatable, and a little bit more plainly written kind of way to get into the cards. So basically what I would start doing is I would, you know, kind of pick out 5 to 10 cards a day and just look up the meanings, you know, between this book and kind of, if I felt like I wanted a little more depth, I would go into this little resource over here. And yeah, I felt like this was very good. This book is very good. It has little prompts, which I never really used, you know, like little exercises and different things like that. But mostly I just really looked at the definitions of the cards and kind of getting an understanding of the major and minor arcana and things like that. And yeah, I mean, so all of it, it's the kind of a pretty cool, like fun, easy way to get into tarot. So I definitely would recommend this book for a beginner, especially if you're finding like learning the tarot overwhelming. Like if you're not necessarily just like ready to like jump into like that deep intellectual pursuit that reading the tarot can be, I would definitely recommend this book, How to Deal. They kind of did their own artwork, and there is a corresponding deck that, you know, actually exists, like a real tarot deck with these images. And that kind of brings me to my next topic. I, you know, have been intrigued to pick up the deck because I do think that this book is a very good resource, but just something, you know, maybe never really want to pick it up. I'm not crazy about the artwork. I mean, I don't hate it. I think it's fun, but it's not something that really like totally speaks to me. And that's like the next thing I kind of want to talk about in this video, like what it means to connect to a tarot deck. So it's funny because for me, I want to talk about this because this is a little bit of me kind of learning as I go and eating my own words. Like I just remember telling my husband, you know, like when people would say like, oh, I don't connect with that deck, or I don't think I would connect with that deck, I found it was like kind of like silly and ridiculous. Is that like an excuse for not knowing how to read with a certain deck? Because I really just didn't know what that meant. It seemed like, again, like this like flowery kind of new age language. And yeah, I just thought it was just people being silly and stuff like that until I kind of started to experience it for myself. I'm like a big collector, you know, I have tendencies towards being a hoarder. So, you know, I definitely have a collector's mind when it comes to tarot. I definitely get very intrigued by decks. I bought a lot of decks right away as soon as I started like learning more and being able to read for read for myself and other people, mostly for other people. It took me a while to actually really learn how to read for myself. Interestingly, as I started collecting those decks and as I started trying to read with them and different things like that, I started to understand like what it means to connect to a tarot deck. So with that, I want to show the second deck that I got. This is definitely a deck I connect with 100%. This might be the deck that I connect with the most, and I think this is really kind of shaping up to be the deck that I read for other people with. This is the Mystic Mondays Tarot deck by Grace DeWong. So these are what the backs of the cards look like. They have that beautiful holographic foil. This like really spoiled me. Now every time I get a deck, I look at the, foiling on the side, and if it doesn't have a foiling on the side, I'm a little bit like let down, to be honest, because this is just it's just such a cool touch, like when you're like shuffling, to have like that kind of foiling on the side. And I have a few other decks with that kind of thing, which I will show you as well. But for me, this deck just speaks to me. It's like, it's a little bit different than the way other decks speak to me. Like the art is it's a very like digital artwork. So like you see, this is their Two of Cups. Seven of Wands. This has been a stalker card for me in my time for sure. Tower. So this is like very like graphic design kind of artwork. Some might read it as a little bit sterile. Colors, like the colors are like super insanely vivid, and I'm someone who lives for aesthetics and color and things like that, and it's just gorgeous. Like it's just really very beautifully stimulating to the brain. It kind of puts you in like this dopamine euphoric state just playing with them. And yeah, so this is like definitely my favorite deck for reading for other people. I think that, it doesn't get, like the artwork is, since it's like more of a graphic design type of artwork, it doesn't get super, like, I don't get so attached to the imagery. So I'm kind of able to kind of see past the imagery a little bit and just kind of think about what I'm getting intuitively to tell someone who is not me, someone outside of myself. So I think that this deck works really, really well to for other people in my personal experience. This deck does fairly clearly list the card. This is again the Tower. This has the Roman numeral in the name, and it's all on the bottom. It's kind of like this white font. It's pretty clear, but it's a little less clear than the Radiant Rider-Waite, because it doesn't have like that contrasting white on the top and the bottom. So you kind of have to look at it a little bit more closely. But still, it's definitely a Rider-Waite inspired tarot deck, and it's very it's pretty easy to learn, pretty easy to read with, but still so fucking cool. This is like it's really the most badass deck that I own, even though I got crazy and bought a bunch of decks after this one. I think, this was just such a high standard. I just keep trying to get something that inspires me as much as this does. It's so good. So with that, that's like obviously, and the Rider-Waite as well, are decks that I really connect to. So those are two decks that I definitely really connect with. So I'm gonna show you kind of something that I, don't necessarily connect with. This was like the first deck that kind of showed me, there is something to this, having to connect to your deck to be able to really want to read with it and things like that. So this is the next deck. This is the Dark Mansion Tarot. This is kind of more like one of those indie ones. Mystic Monday started off as an indie deck too, but I think they were really able to perfect it once it went into mass production. I know that people had some problems with this, but mine is absolutely perfect, but it's also the mass-produced version. It's not the original version, but based on what I've seen, I think this version is absolutely perfect. But the Dark Mansion deck, I think this is still kind of like an indie, more limited release type of thing. This deck is gorgeous. This is very much loved in the tarot community. I know a lot of people really connect with this deck, really resonate with it. It has this great box. It's like cool, like fortune teller lady on the, on the cover of it. It has like this very like Tim Burton kind of like inspired looking artwork. I think it's, this is Tarot Tech. Is that what it's called? Tarot Tech Studio. They are, I think they're based in Poland. Yeah, I mean, it's gorgeous. And again, it has like a matte black foil on the side. So I think that that's a really nice touch. It was 100% cooler than if it was just white on the sides. Like you don't even know until you actually start, playing with decks, like how cool that is. For me, that's something that really gets me. Yeah, so this deck is like, it's beautiful. Like it has, the Wheel of Fortune. That's one of them. Death is like cool. He's just like hanging out. He's like this skeleton man hanging out. the Six of Wands. It's kind of like celebration, but like marriage celebration. They kind of like, it's definitely a Rider-Waite inspired deck, but they kind of take some liberties, which I think it's a good thing, you know, that when tarot decks do that, they kind of like make the story their own, so to speak. But yes, let me get to the point here. And you know, also the backs are gorgeous. Like they have this very they have this very trip to the moon, Les Voyages dans la Lune kind of vibe. The back of the cards, again, absolutely gorgeous. But this was the first deck that I could say that I didn't really connect with. I love this deck. I think it's beautiful aesthetically. But just for me, like, you know, reading with it, you know, I wasn't getting the reads that I wanted to get for other people. It was kind of like, I felt like a little bit blocked with it. Even though I think it's also like, again, like I had thought, you know, not connecting was maybe not being able to read with the deck because maybe the artwork was a little weird. This work is very, very faithful to the Rider-Waite. It's very easy to read with. That's something that I really love about it. Like, you know, I was still kind of like learning at that point, and I was able to read with this deck very easily. But it's just, something is a little off with the way that I read with it and the way I felt when I read with it. I definitely, you know, want to try again. But for me, I just wasn't enjoying my readings as well. I guess I just wasn't enjoying reading as much with it. And I think it really comes down to how you feel about the, you know, the artwork. So for me, I really think this artwork is beautiful. I really appreciate this artwork. I almost do love this artwork. I do love the presentation of this deck, absolutely. But I just think this artwork, it's not quite at my wavelength. Again, like I think for me, I like decks with like a really feminine touch to them, and this one isn't super like masculine or like divine masculine. It doesn't really carry that kind of vibe. And again, you know, like those gender constructs don't really mean too much anyway. It's really, you know, kind of like what you take from it. But that just personally, I just want something for me that kind of has more of a girly, feminine vibe. And that's what I've kind of learned. Like, and again, this one isn't even that, like, it does have some of that in it, but it's just, it's like a little bit goth in a way, a little bit like Nightmare Before Christmas, Corpse Bride. It's like very Halloween in a way. So it's just a little bit not quite my vibe, even though I absolutely respect, and you know, even looking at this deck now, I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, it's so beautiful, but you know, I don't have the same like love and desire, and I don't like the readings that I get as much with this deck. So that's kind of what showed me like, wait a second, there is something to this connecting with. Another one that I'm not quite connecting with so much is the Serpent Fire Tarot deck. So this one's a little more abstract. I would say this one is definitely, you know, some of it could just be challenged because it is definitely a lot harder to read because it doesn't really follow the traditional, like, you know, Rider-Waite like imagery structure. It's kind of like digital art mixed with collage. This is the Three of Swords. You know, like the Three of Swords is typically a heart with three swords piercing through it. Like, you don't see any such thing on this card. This is the Death card. I mean, this is actually a really beautiful card. But again, I mean, the artwork, it's, you know, I can definitely appreciate where they were going, this kind of collage, digitized, different things like that. Another thing I don't like about this card is that the back isn't symmetrical. So like you would kind of know like this is like in the reverse state and this is in the upright state. Like, you know, I want it to be kind of like a symmetrical type of thing, so you would not know until the card is, you know, laid on its other side, laid on its front, so to speak. So for me, this is kind of like an aspirational deck, something that I would like to, you know, kind of when I'm able to like really if I ever decide I really want to kind of go beyond the traditional style of tarot reading that I've picked up with intuitive hips. I kind of want to be able to, if I really go more into this like deeper subconscious style of reading, you know, this is definitely the type of deck that I would like to be able to do that with. But just kind of, you know, like I tried to kind of, you know, focus on a few cards a day to kind of get into this deck, and I kind of honestly lost interest because the artwork is cool, but it's not like, you know, there's nothing about it to me that's like really stunning. Nothing to, you know, it's just kind of, it's an art that I can appreciate, but this is the High Priestess, but you know, it's not exactly, it's just not quite that vibe. It just doesn't hit me exactly the way it should aesthetically. This is the Empress. I think it's cool. There are some like pop icons, like this is Elizabeth Taylor, and there's another card that has like Frida Kahlo on it. And this deck does have the gold foil on the side, which I can really appreciate. But yeah, I think for me, it's kind of like going to a museum and seeing a piece of art and finding it like really striking. It could even be a little bit breathtaking to you, something that you really admire. But you know, if it's not something that you necessarily want to hang in your own home, that's something that you can necessarily tell you that you wouldn't connect with it as a deck. And that can also be something that would help you to connect with the deck. Like, you know, if you see certain artwork and you just like love it and it really kind of speaks to like things that you're into. So like if there's a deck, like for example, something for me that I wouldn't find so interesting in a tarot deck if it was more like medieval inspired artwork. Like that could be something that really speaks to certain people. Like they would know that that would be something that they could connect to. So different things like that can actually set you off or on. Like I know that I like things with like certain color palettes, certain, you know, that have that kind of like cute, maybe even like a little bit cutesy or girly or feminine kind of touch to them. Like that's definitely much more my jam than some other decks that don't necessarily carry quite that vibe. And also this is definitely an indie deck. I think you have to get it on her, you know, website, or, you know, just some other like kind of more, you know, indie small business type of online web stores, maybe some boutiques. I don't know if it sells in store anywhere, but yeah, this is not a mass market deck. So I wanted to also talk a little bit about oracle cards because I definitely like to integrate oracle into my tarot readings. I'm not a pure oracle reader, but I definitely feel like oracle cards are great clarifiers in tarot readings. I feel like they can really highlight like key themes of a reading. When you're seeing like certain things come up in the reading, you're like, okay, this is, you know, because I don't work with spreads either. So for me, I'm just kind of getting these different messages and things like that and thinking about, you know, like if there's kind of like a tie, like if I'm seeing certain similarities in the messages between certain cards, that would like heighten the message for me. But if I see a few key themes, sometimes I would like to use an oracle card to kind of see which of those key themes is the most predominant for what I'm reading for, so to speak. With that, I really do like using oracle cards, and this is one of my preferred oracle decks. This is the Sea Melodies Oracle deck, Enchanting Messages from the Mermaids by Jessica Lee. I have to admit, when I bought this, I thought it was going to be like a really quirky like type of deck with like cool like weird mermaidy artwork, and it's not like that really, and I'm happy that it's not. And I love this little box. It's like nice petite cards. They do have cute little you know, backs on them with like the little mermaid image. But the cards are just basically like, you know, like words and like little sayings. The little like border around the cards like differs from card to card, but not too much. So this one is Explore. Maps show what has already been discovered. Go another way. So they have like this like keyword and then like little like description. Prudence. It's another one. Don't be lured by the siren song. So I find this deck really good to work with because it's so simple, because it gives you like just this one word to kind of, you know, kind of tie in your whole reading. If you're doing like a tarot reading, you kind of like, I'll usually do the tarot reading with, you know, anywhere from like 6 to 12 cards typically, and then I'll take 1 to 2 oracle cards to kind of really tie everything together. And it's amazing how it really always ties in. Like, you know, there's always some element where I can take like, you know, like where prudence applies in what I've already been, you know, kind of reading and thinking about and saying. So it's just a beautiful way to really tie in my readings, or just the readings in general. So that's how I use oracle cards. They're kind of like a supplement to my tarot readings. Another deck I have that I really like that's an oracle deck is the Prism Oracle. This one's kind of similar to the Sea Melodies, but again, this one really kind of works with my love of color. This one isn't particularly like feminine or girly, but it's okay because it's very, like, I think I'm really drawn to these like modern looking decks, like graphic design type of decks. So I really like this one. Healing and guidance through color. So it kind of like takes the traditional meanings of color and the traditional feeling that you get from color and gives them different meanings. And it's just like these like geometrical images. Like this one says balance with the color. Very simple. Again, just kind of gives you that like one word that you need to tie your readings together. Sweetness. You know, pink. And when I was younger, my mom actually said that I used to be able to read auras, and I kind of vaguely remember talking to her about it when I was like really, really young. I haven't been able to do that as an adult. I would definitely like to explore and like try to like learn how to do that again. I think that ties into my passion for color now in my life. Like color is just something that really, really gets me high in the most beautiful, natural way possible. It's very inspiring to me. So I definitely love that this is a color-based deck. I don't feel like you see that very often, and just the geometrical patterns and just the simple word, and it does come with a guidebook, like it kind of gives you deeper meanings of that. But I do like that this deck it just has that simple word, so if you want to kind of dig deeper, you can refer to the guidebook, or in kind of like if you want to learn the deck, so to speak, you can kind of really learn the guidebook. But you don't even have to, like you can just work with that one word and like what it means to you, and that can help you tie in your reading. Or if you were just to read with the deck, you can just lay with the oracle deck, you can just lay out a few cards and speak through and think through what those words mean to you. It doesn't necessarily have to go with this, but this helps. Just knowing like what the colors mean with the words is pretty cool as well. So I think this is a good one. And this is another resource that I have accompanied me in my tarot journey. This is the Modern Witchcraft Book of Tarot. I just love the way this book looks. It almost looks like an old school grimoire a little bit. I like this book as a beginner's tarot book because it definitely is a beginner's book, but I think it goes a little bit deeper than obviously something that's meant for like a younger audience, like how to deal, or even just some other beginner tarot books. Like this one talks a little bit more about the history of the book, and it does lay out every card, but it has like maybe like about two full pages on each card, or a page and a half on each card, so it goes like a little bit deeper. It kind of gets into exactly what the reversal means and things like that. It does get into some like numerology. It talks more about the elements, different things like that. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a good book, and there are some, kind of ways to integrate it into like spell work, and it gives you some, spreads. And so I think that this is like a good resource, definitely. In addition to that, I worked with a mentor. I worked with Sarah Chappell to kind of really help me flesh out what each and every single card meant to me, and it was a great mentorship. It just helped me kind of work through a lot of different things, and she really helped me kind of have the courage and determination to put my website together and kind of really enact this vision that I had for myself within my journey as a tarot reader. So I'm very happy and grateful that I was able to do that, and I'm taking classes locally. I have a group of friends who we call each other our tribe, because one of the people in the group, Christian, he is a tarot teacher, and he hosted a tarot for beginners class at one of the spiritual centers near us, and we it was just ended up being like the four of us in the class, and now we kind of have like another class that we're doing together, and we're like really good friends, and we've hung out offline. So it's kind of really opened up my world, getting into tarot, and it was just something that I was really drawn to, and I think that was for a reason. I feel like this is 2019 has been a year of great growth for me, and I definitely attribute a lot of that to my journey with tarot. So another deck that I kind of wanted to take a look at with you guys, this deck really reignited my love for tarot. I had a little bit of a lull with it where I was kind of getting overwhelmed and different things like that. This is the deck. This is definitely the deck that I read for myself with, and the first deck that I've really been able to read for myself with like real success. And I started tarot journaling, and I really think that this deck is a great deck for anybody who likes a little bit more of a feminine vibe in their deck, kind of like the type of decks that I like. Anybody who considers themselves a like a witch, especially like someone who considers themselves like a modern witch. And this is the Modern Witch, that's the name of the deck. Tarot deck by Lisa Sterl. So what I love about this deck, and I didn't even expect to love this so much, I feel like this deck it's super faithful to the Rider-Waite, which I love. This is the Hermit. So if you're a fan of the Rider-Waite, you would definitely really appreciate this deck as well. The Two of Pentacles, the Fool. It's like pretty cool because she's like wearing headphones, and there's like a cityscape, but it's like pretty much the same traditional image of the Fool. The Wheel of Fortune. I just feel like it's just, and the quality of the deck is just beautiful. It's like glossy cards. They are like a little bit thicker. They're just very nice to shuffle with. They don't have like any kind of edging on the side. It's just white, but just something about these cards. It's just very, very nice to work with. I love this Nine of Cups. Three of Swords, you know, they didn't really do anything to make it super different. They just add, I guess like this, they added this like black paint or whatever that is. Maybe like black blood or, you know, witch's blood, who knows, but like it's just, they kept it really traditional, which I really love about this deck, and it really reignited my love for the tarot and, you know, deepened my appreciation for the Rider-Waite. So yeah, I think this is a great deck. This is the Ten of Swords. This is actually, this card is in the deck twice. There's another version of it with the same artwork, but it says everything is fine on the bottom, which is definitely a perfect depiction of the meaning of Ten of Swords. And I just wanted to show you like one more deck that I really, you know, connect with and enjoy reading with. This is the Bad Girl Tarot. This is definitely an indie deck. This is by Katie Skelly, who's a cartoonist. And these cards are a little bit bigger. They have like this really cool back to them. And again, I love that it's a symmetrical backing, so whether it's reversed or upright, you wouldn't know until you face the card forward. This deck reminds me of the Modern Witch deck. This deck actually came out first, but it's a little more surreal. Like, it definitely has like this cool feminist vibe to it, but it's definitely a little more playful and surreal. And the Modern Witch Tarot deck is just definitely a very faithful rendition of the Rider-Waite. So like, this is the Six of Pentacles in the Bad Girl Tarot. The Two of Cups. Like, these girls are just super cool. The Tower, there's like a little bit of like sexiness, like you kind of see like their underpants and stuff like that. The Star is just like some babe in the pool. So perfect. So yeah, this is definitely another deck that's very girly, very fun, something, you know, that I feel like when I read with it, I really enjoy the readings that I get out of it, whether they be for other people or for myself. Like, I just feel like I'm able to be really satisfied with the readings. Like, the right message came through for me to transport, so to speak. So in 2020, I definitely want to get into some of the other decks that I have. I definitely want to get into more non-traditional decks. I do have one Thoth-based deck, but you know, I think that's a journey that's not really calling to me at this time. I mean, maybe it will be in the future, getting into the Thoth tarot world, but for me, I just want to get into more, I'm really drawn to a lot of like more surreal, more abstract type of decks, and I want to be able to kind of move away from the traditional style of reading that I have a little bit, maybe kind of interchange it with more of a deeper subconscious style where, you know, I'm really getting hits from like looking at the artwork and getting things that don't necessarily correlate always to the traditional meaning of the card. A couple of decks on my wish list are definitely the Salvador Dali Tarot that just came out. That looks really, really cool. I think, you know, being a deck that you would kind of really read with your subconscious, and of course it's Dali, it's kind of like his own trip, so it's definitely going to be more of like a subconscious, intuitive type of read. And definitely just as a collector, there's definitely a difference between like collecting decks and reading with decks and connecting with decks. I think there's like room for both. There's definitely room for that appreciation of cards and just like having cards that you know, like look at that kind of inspire you because of the artwork, feeling that they give, but then there's also decks that you just really like love to read with, and those are the decks that you connect with the most. One thing I would definitely recommend is going on Pinterest and just like looking up tarot cards, which is surprisingly extremely satisfying. So if you like tarot, if you're a collector of tarot or reader of tarot, and you don't necessarily feel like you feel like me, that you don't connect with every single deck, and you don't necessarily feel like you want to spend money on every single deck that you're kind of, that strikes your fancy, like just looking at Pinterest is surprisingly satisfying because you just kind of get that like visual hit and, you know, deep appreciation for the artwork of the cards and things like that. And that really like sparks your passion, and it's very satisfying. So that's a little tip. And the last deck, like kind of on my wish list that I kind of want to talk about a little bit in this video, on my wish list for 2020 for sure, is the Cosmic Cycles Tarot. This one is, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like, it's almost like, kind of has a slight anime vibe to it, but not really. It's like very like cartoony. I think the court cards kind of like exist throughout the whole deck. Like it's like the story of these characters, which is something that was always an idea of mine. I always like the idea of one character purveying, so you can kind of really see like the fool's journey and the journey of that one character in the different cards, as opposed to seeing these different characters that only appear like once. I always thought that was a really cool concept. So like them actually like kind of creating a cast. It definitely has like it has a cartoon, like a movie feel to it. Something that looks very, very unique. You know, again, I'm not sure if I would connect with it until I actually like had it in my hands and read with it, but I definitely think I want to try. I really think it's a very like exciting, unique looking deck, and I think it's coming out in January of next year. So anyway, those were just some thoughts on my tarot journey. Just wanted to show you some decks, just hang out. So that was just a little bit of me geeking out over tarot cards. You know, if you're interested in getting a tarot reading with me, definitely check out my website, Goddess Undone. I have several different offerings on there for tarot readings, you know, in different price ranges and things like that. And yeah, if you're interested, definitely check that out. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and have a good one. Bye, guys.